minutes, see if anyone else trickles in. We'll get this thing rolling.
You do know we have.
Here.
Will they help with some of that? Yes, they will. Oh, really?
fan.
Karen,
We all know you,
Karen, yeah, she's chairman.
I know Karen.
Nation.
Oh, okay, well, I'll grab her then.
How are you?
I asked her yesterday about confirmation, but maybe she didn't understand what I was asking.
Probably not. Good.
Because I'm like, you know, you're a teacher, you were a teacher.
Guys, so quickly.
That's right. She's very, she's just almost.
All right, for everyone at home, I don't know if you'll actually be able to read the whiteboard or not, but I tried to move the camera for you, so hopefully this works. If everyone's all right, we're just gonna go ahead and get this started. I don't want to keep you guys over.
I think
Morning,
we can see
everyone.
it. It looks good.
This is Civil Discourse. I am Jamie Hommowun. I am a doctor of psychology, and it's my pleasure to be with you this morning to talk a little bit about this topic. I think it is a very relevant and timely topic. I had originally thought that we might do a little bit of debate discussion today, but I don't think that really gave me a lot of good prompts for civil discourse. So we're not going to do that. It didn't turn out that way. That's okay. We have a good topic. We have a good group. So to open this up, let's talk just a little bit about what do we mean by civil discourse. We're going to talk about things you know what it is. What is civil discourse?
Well, the first thing I think of is discord.
Discord. Okay, I put that in red. Oh, all right. Discord, not discourse. What else? What is civil discourse? What do we mean by that?
Exchange of ideas.
An exchange of ideas, right?
Discussion.
Calm discussion. I like that. Without killing your foot.
Neighbors out there.
Right. My handwriting might be terrible. I apologize. Hopefully you can figure it out.
Respectful.
Respectful.
Maybe civil, not like respectful, but civil, like governmental.
Civil, kind of like civic. that kind of-
Yeah.
All right, like that. Anything else? What do you mean when we say civil discourse?
What I think of is listening and exchanging ideas with somebody whose viewpoints are different from your own, and as LB said, in a respectful way. Or we could also say a lost art.
Very good.
Yeah, that goes back to the first one.
Does it need to be a calm discussion? Or can
Yeah,
it
we-
be, energetic, yeah.
I think we're gonna call
It's
Good words.
all right,
bigger.
bigger. I like that.
Well, I don't know, that tends
I
to
think
be,
it-
turns
I
into
think if it
something
gets
else.
too energetic, then we lose the civility.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think that it's harder for an extrovert to not get sucked into the energetic exchange of ideas.
Yeah.
Well, also people who feel really strongly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And think everybody else is wrong.
Strong opinions
Yeah.
get in the way. So looking at this list, we're talking about an exchange of ideas, a discussion. Maybe it's calm, maybe it's energetic, maybe it's vigorous, but it has respect. Respect is the key point. Maybe it has to do with something civic or something like more communal than an individual conversation. We're going to try and exchange ideas with someone who may have a different viewpoint. Does that all sound right to you guys? Are you in agreement with that? Would you say that those are the kinds of things that we could look at as maybe like guiding principles for this discussion today? Yeah.
Yes.
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 All right. Congratulations, you just had a civil discourse. Good job. Now, why is that so hard? Why do we have such a hard time doing that out in the world? What gets in the way of that? Let's look at some of the things that kind of get in the way, that kind of block people a bit. So first, I'm gonna divide up the room a little bit just to make things a little bit more interesting. How many people in here identify as men? Okay, at least a few. Okay. Any women in here?
Yeah.
Okay. Claim that, you guys don't kick me out. All right, how about people who have been Episcopalians their whole lives? People who converted to the Episcopal faith? No. All right, all right. How about, what am I gonna do? People who have a partner, long-term life partner. Anybody who's single.
Me.
Mhm. And this one might fall flat, but I'll try it anyway. Anybody over the age of 50? Oh, yeah. Anybody under the age of 50?
Raise our hands.
Now, age in particular, we could divide that up differently. We could, do 65, we could pick any arbitrary.
How old do you?
I'm not gonna step on that one. That people have an uncivil discourse. But I'm looking at those things tend to color our perceptions, right? I'm gonna think about things a different way if I'm coming at it from a male perspective than female, or from an over 50 versus under 50, or even Episcopalian versus converted, right? We all have different backgrounds, we have different experience. Am I talking too fast? I thought we have different experiences, and it colors the way that we view the world. Now, one thing I want to talk about, as we're looking at those kind of different things, people were raising their hands at different points. There's different overlap in those groups for each one of us, right? Has anybody heard the word intersectionality before? Let me poll the audience. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ooh, good, about half the room. Can you guys tell me, what does intersectionality mean? Yeah, I know, we'll put you on the spot. Not you specifically, but anybody. Toss it out. Yeah.
It's how the confluence of separate factors that influence our identity influence our lives and interactions with one another.
Very good.
And now you have to
Can you
define
say that in
confluence.
Different parts of our identities come together to make us who we are and influence our interactions with each other, as we are all people who have various factors to our identities.
So this is about tolerance.
You're going in the direction I'm going. You're going in the direction I'm going. So intersectionality was first figured out, or first really quantified, clarified, defined by the feminist movement, which I am a recent student of. I did not feel much right to do much reading in that literature before, so apologies if I'm coming across as a neophyte. I am. But in that context, they look at intersectionality as a way of identifying how people are othered in more than one way. So when we're talking about intersectionality, we're talking about someone who is not only female, but someone who is female and of color, or someone who is female and of color and of a queer body mindset. When you start adding those different layers on, you are progressively more and more other from the arbitrarily defined normal. We're just going to put that out for the purpose of argument as cisgender, heterosexual, and Caucasian. If you don't think that's the normal, you're probably in the wrong country, but that is the default here in America. And when you're not any one of those things, you tend to have more difficulty with things like civil discourse because you are othered. And the more interesting point with intersectionality in this study is it's not additive, it's multiplicative. So if I am both female and of color, I have more than just 2 times the resistance. I might have 3 times or 4 times the resistance of someone who's just female or just black. Right? So it becomes more of a compounded issue as you go along. Intersectionality is a way of looking at how those factors work together to help us interact with the world. And it has a progressively more powerful, more potent impact the more of those factors you have with somebody else. That all makes sense to everybody so far? Okay. So intersectionality. When we're looking at these traits, we're talking about gender, we're talking about religious background, we're talking about age. What do we notice about those traits? What kind of traits are they? And this is a hard question, sorry.
Well, when you're saying that before, I'm wondering.
Yeah.
Are these all necessarily visible?
Ooh, good. Yeah, a lot of those are visible. Episcopalian, maybe not so much. We can bling up, but
Yeah.
but yeah, a lot of them are visible. I like that. What else?
They're all properties.
They're all properties.
Can you ask the question again?
Sure. Like what do these traits, like age or gender or religious background, what kind of qualities are they? What do they have in common?
Oh, okay.
Sorry. Thank you.
Well, I think that they're all part of identity.
Thank you. Yes.
And yet some of them are like kind of ascribed at birth,
Mhm.
and some of them change
Mhm.
with time.
Mhm.
And so people can sometimes not be, may not be the same identity or have the same factors
Yeah.
working for them at the same time.
Absolutely. So. Great. Yep.
They're personal.
They're personal. Yes, yes. So talking about like personal identity factors. Now, whether or not you agree with that identity, whether or not you accept it, or you're a freak like me and you go, no, I don't think that's quite right. You don't necessarily have control over how other people see it. But you do have some control over whether you choose to absorb it, whether you choose to hold on to it. And the tighter and more closely you hold on to one of those pieces, the more you look at that as part of your core identity, the harder it's going to be to have a civil discourse with someone who disagrees.
When you say harder, what do you mean by that?
I mean, all these things that we're looking at, we're gonna talk a little bit more about it. Things like that discord, that having a more difficult time working with people who have stronger opinions. You're gonna tend to get more defensive.
opinionated.
Yeah. You're going to feel more need to defend your territory. It's just intuitively, you're going to sense that this person doesn't agree with me. If I can see that they're correct on this point, some fundamental part of myself is compromised or attacked or damaged. And so I don't have that wiggle room, right? Making sense so far? Yeah. So, other things that can impact civil discourse, identity, if there's an identity issue, that's a big problem. External stressors. So if there's something else in the wider world that is causing us to be more heightened, to be more geared up, to be more keyed in, we're less likely to be out with the civil discourse. Examples of that might be context. If I'm having a conversation with Hester, we're just talking outside the church, it's a pretty low stress environment, If we're having a public debate on stage and she's taking one position, I'm taking the other,
Mhm.
suddenly the odds of this civil discourse being completely peaceful and calm and we're not taking digs at each other goes way down because of the context. I'm in an environment where there's an expectation that there's going to be a little bit more defense. There's going to be a little bit more rigorous adherence to that position.
So the environment develops
Yeah.
the expectation.
It can influence the expectation, absolutely. Observers, again, that public debate, another element of that is there's people watching.
Yeah.
If I have the sense that there are people watching, whether or not anyone is actually watching, doesn't actually matter. If I feel like eyes are on me, if I feel like what I say, what I do, how I act in the next few minutes is going to affect my reputation, is going to affect what people think about me, is going to affect how people see me, the stakes go way up, right? Whether or not there's actually anyone looking at me who gives a care at all. If I think I'm under the microscope, if I think someone's looking at me, my brain goes into more of that. I better be careful. I better not take a step back. I better not give anything, right? Yeah.
I think that friendly conversation is different from civil discourse.
Yes.
Because this implies that there are different points of view.
Mhm.
And so are we in a persuasive conversation? Are we in a sharing information? Or is it safer just not to bring up the subject at all?
That's great. I like that. Yes. So civil discourse implies that there is some difference of opinion. Otherwise, we would need to practice civility, right? If it's friendly, well, all right, I guess we can't have a friendly conversation about your favorite sports team, but the point is taken. If there is nothing invested in a position, then there's no need for this. Exactly. Other things that might impact, anybody have any thoughts of something else that might give you an additional stress if you're having a conversation?
Well, in my case, this is not a confession, but my parents argued a lot.
Okay.
So I just do not like arguing at all.
Absolutely.
As an adult. And I don't want to say I've taken the high road because that's ridiculous. But I'm really interested in how other people think and how, how they feel more than wanting them to know how I feel. Kind of become more introspective about it. And so I do think that one's background determines how they're going to relate to other people and what they can handle.
Quick your words just a little bit, but yeah, your history, I'm going to go out on a limb and say your trauma history, whether you think it's a major trauma or not. I'm a psychologist, we talk about trauma. Your trauma history influences. There are things that you do well, that you do better, that are taking the high road, that you are superior in because you were traumatized. But there are also things where you are vulnerable because you were traumatized. It's both sides of the same coin. You know, you become really good at doing things that helped you survive, but unfortunately, you had to use those things to help you survive. So,
I was just gonna add that my parents argued a lot too, and so that's why I am here.
What?
But I feel like the opposite, like, you know, arguing is something that's like, experienced it, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not afraid of it. So
Yep.
they're different outcomes, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was trauma, but I mean, you know, how we deal with it is different. But anyway, I just thought that was an interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that.
yes,
I think sometimes it depends on who you're talking to, too.
absolutely.
If you
yes.
know that person is extremely opinionated, you're gonna back off a little bit because you don't want to get into a big conflict or something.
Mhm.
Or the opposite, you know. If it's somebody that's open and you feel like you can discourse with, you know, back and forth, then you're gonna feel differently.
Yes.
And to what Sue kind of said under her breath. Sometimes, I mean, I know I have a history of going to a particular family dinner. That family member is no longer part of our family, but going and saying, I'm not gonna say anything, but then I get baited. You know, and then it's like, oh. Why did I say that?
Both
Very
points
true.
actually lead very nicely into the next thing I want to talk about. Thank you guys for the beautiful segue. So when we're facing somebody who is very strongly opinionated, or someone who we know is going to bait us, or someone who kind of brings that reaction up in you, right? How does your brain react? What happens?
It's almost a stress reaction.
Yes, yes.
That you're like, yeah.
And what do we do when we get stressed out?
Absolutely.
Lose
Fight or
control.
flight,
Right?
Yep, that's what I'm looking for. Thank you. So yes, in psychology, we talk about responses to stress, and the traditional one is fight or flight. We have in the last 10 years or so kind of revised that a little bit because we can never leave well enough alone. We're always trying to make things better and more just healed and trying to expand on our body of knowledge. So fight or flight, again, fight, saber-toothed tiger's coming at me, I'm gonna punch it in the nose, right? Fight, flight, saber-toothed tiger's coming at me, I'm getting out of dodge. We've added freeze, which is the idea, saber-toothed tiger's coming at me, please don't see me, please don't see me, please don't see me, please don't see me. And in the last 3 years, they've added fawn. I'm kind of on the fence on that one. I think, you know, if you're fawning to a tiger, you're having a fundamental misperception of the state of the universe, because that tiger does not care if you're going to be nice and kind and be a sweet servant to it and do anything it wants. It's not going to care. But we do kind of look at that as a possible, especially in social context. You can fight, flight, freeze, or fawn.
Yeah, fawning is a type of flight. It's like you're disappearing, you're just kind of disappearing, you're not
Yeah.
leaving, but
But
you're kind of disappearing yourself.
I like that.
Well, and it can also be like, I mean, if you don't see the tiger as a tiger, but something
Okay.
not quite as threatening to your life, but maybe threatening to your sense of yourself.
Mhm.
Fawning could be like a form of pacification, like, oh, I'll say something nice in order to get you to see that I'm nice, and then maybe you'll open up a little more to me, and then maybe eventually I can change your mind. So, I mean,
I'll conceive now with the long-term goal in mind.
yeah.
It's when to engage
Uh-huh.
and how to engage.
Mhm.
And listening is a big part of being able to have a civil discourse.
Absolutely.
Which isn't always the case when you are entrenched in
Mhm.
your own
Mhm.
BS belief system.
Yes.
I think in the last 10 years, as a country, that fight or flight, I think a lot of us have just chosen the flight because the fight is just so awful.
Exhausting.
Yeah,
Where does it have to
Exhausting.
get? Where does it
yeah, you're just like,
I don't want
Yeah,
to do that.
it is painful.
So really quick, I'm going to.
To be afraid of talking with this person. Why do you need to worry about it?
Mhm. So, I'm actually going to use your point. I want to jump off of that. Why do you need to be afraid of talking to this person? All right, so our brains, and I'm a psychologist, I'm going to talk about brains a little bit, sorry, are kind of like computers where things are kind of wired in series. Right, any electricians in the audience, anyone knows what wiring in series looks like? No, basically you have boxes that kind of work together, and if anything happens to cut off your flow of electricity in this box, everything downstream gets lost, right? So it all has to be in order. When we are in a high stress environment, when we feel that we are really threatened, our brains kind of go into a little bit of shutdown, right? We call this in psychology, the cute name for it is the amygdala hijack, right? And this means we perceive something in our environment is a threat, and we need to react to that threat. And I need to do whatever is necessary in the next 30 seconds, 3 seconds, to not die. That's what my brain is wired to do. The back part of my brain is going, there's a threat, I need to not die. And everything forward of that circuit gets shut up because it doesn't matter because I need to not die. This works very well when a saber-toothed tiger is charging at me and I have 3 seconds to get up a tree, find a stick, or do something to not die. This does not work very well when my opponent is a Republican who's spouting some hateful speech at me and I just feel like I'm being personally attacked. Now, it's the same circuit. It wasn't designed for social threat. It was designed for life and limb physical, I'm about to get killed threat. But it trips the same way. And our bodies react the same way. And our brains shut down the same way. So when you're feeling threatened, when you're feeling someone's attacking you, when you feel like those personal items of my identity are being under assault, your brain shuts down. Why do you need to feel like you're threatened? You don't. But if you do feel like you're threatened, it is a predictable consequence that your higher order thinking, it's not going to be there. And it takes about 15 minutes after the circuit triggers for it to fully reset and for you to get back to yourself. Now, you can see it's coming on. You don't necessarily go from 0 to 50, right? You can feel like this person's pushing me. I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling on edge. Those are signs that you're getting close to that trip point. But if someone triggers you, you got that conversation, and I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say, oh, he said it. You trip, and once you've tripped over, you're now into flight or fight, and you say those things that you really wish you hadn't said 15 minutes later when your brain comes back online. 15 minutes later, right? So,
or
when
your
this-
nephew says,
Mhm.
let's not talk about this anymore.
right, something happens that breaks the stress, and your brain has that time to flip the circuit breaker and get back to where it was supposed to be. But when we are in this fear mode, when we're in this survival mode, everything up here goes away. And our brains and our bodies are geared up. We got the adrenaline running. We got the energy boosting. We're feeling twitchy. We're feeling angry. We're ready to punch something in the face or run the heck away. Hold really still, depending on your psychological makeup, to not die. Now, the threat that you actually have in the environment was never going to kill you in the first place. But your brain doesn't know better. And your brain doesn't care. It's going to do what it needs to do, or what it thinks it needs to do, what it's been designed to do to keep you alive. Works really well. We've had thousands and thousands of years of not dying because we have this circuit. That's why it sticks around. But it's really inconvenient sometimes. And we need to understand that about ourselves. We need to understand that about the people we're talking with, because everyone else we have a civil discourse with, they'll be another human being. 15 years come back, maybe we'll have some AIs capable of having civil discourse. Right now, they fake it, but they're really not good at it. For right now, everyone you talk to is a human. They have the same circuitry that you do. I know. And sometimes you wonder, right? Sometimes you wonder.
Evolution.
Jumping off of that, so we're looking at the way that our bodies kind of automatically react. We have systems that don't quite work out. Another thing we don't really think about a lot of times is if we have internal things that are pushing us more towards that stress point, things that are making us just that much closer, so we're already on a hair trigger before we get into that conversation. And there are things that we may not think a lot about. Things like, did I get enough sleep last night? How long has it been since I had a snack? What is my family background? What is my experience and my history leading into this? Am I just overstressed? Do I have too much going on already? I have no processing capacity left. So this thing comes in, and it's that one last thing that I have nothing left for. Am I physically sick? Do I have a light cold? Like, cold doesn't do much of anything, but it pushes that stress out. So these things that physically wear on us, these things that slow us down, that make us more resource drained, make it harder for us to move forward. And this is a real thing. I'm going to give you a random bit of trivia here. I work in a mental health institution that works with forensic patients, so I have a lot of random court trivia. But one thing just for you guys to learn something that I'm sure you didn't know before today. Parole boards, they've done a research study to try and figure out what factors are there that make a judge more likely to give a parolee an earlier release and a lighter term. All right. They're looking at like across the board, looking at all sorts of factors like what was the crime, what is the race, the gender, the age, the circumstances of the crime, all sorts of things. They came up with only 2 that actually made a statistical difference. First one, is it actually that parolee's birthday, the day of the hearing? If it is their birthday on that day, social impact says, oh, well, I guess I gotta be nice to them, it's their birthday. Their birthday's tomorrow, birthday's yesterday, doesn't matter. If it is their birthday, you have a better chance of getting parole. So don't go to prison. Try to get your parole hearing on your birthday. The second
Hearing on your birthday.
is, did the judge just get back from lunch?
Oh.
If the judge just ate lunch, he's more likely to parole you and give you a lighter sentence. If it's before lunch, you're screwed. It makes a difference. We don't have an awareness of how much our brain's functioning is actually impacted by the biological processes that support the software that we're running, right? We don't pay attention to how much sleep if we think about it, we're like, oh yeah, I didn't get enough sleep. Oh, I am kind of hangry, aren't I? But by default, we ignore it. Our brains are not really wired to kind of self-monitor to that extent. They're wired to try and monitor the world around us. And I want to make sure that, again, we're not dying and that we understand what's happening around us. And paying too much attention to what's going on with me takes away brain power from thinking about what's going on out there. So you have to be really conscious of those things because your brain's not going to do it for you. It's not by default going to tell you about those things. And again, when we're talking about heightened brain states, high activation, high stress, feeling nervous. We talked about the amygdala hijack that will kind of shut things out from the back, even if you're just overwhelmed. You're not stressed, you're not feeling like something's threatening you, but I've got too much on my plate. I haven't got enough sleep. I'm just a little bit hungry. Your brain's going to start to shut down from the front back, right? The thing that takes the most energy, that most of all the biological processes in your body is your brain, Yeah, you got heart beating, you got cells that are dividing and replicating and killing themselves off millions of times a minute. I mean, there's a huge, unfathomable number of processes going on in your body. And with all of that, like 60% of it is this. It's what your brain does. That is what we are built to focus on. But when you need to cut power, when we need to cut back, what are we going to cut? When we can't cut heartbeat, we'll die. We can't cut respiration, that's important. And really, it wouldn't save us that much power anyway. It's like your cell phone. Your cell phone battery is dying, what happens? Your screen goes dim, right? It's like, oh, I don't have no battery left anymore. I'm just going to turn this down because I know the screen is the biggest draw. That'll maybe let me eke out a few more minutes of use. And I might be sitting here going, God, I wish my screen wasn't dim. I can hardly use this thing. But my phone doesn't care. My phone is like, I'm just trying to get a few more minutes of use out of me before my battery dies. Bodies are the same way. Brain starts shutting down from the front back because I don't have enough energy to handle things. I need to get more resources freed up. What can I cut? Moral thinking, that's really not that important. We can deal with the consequences of that later. Heartbeat we need. So your brain starts to fog in. You lose longer perspective. You lose the ability to kind of think about what's the long-term consequence going to be. You narrow in on just what do I got to do in the next 10 minutes because that's all you have the capacity for. That's a natural process. It's a biological process. It's not a judgment against anyone here. It's not a judgment against anyone that we're trying to have a discourse with. This is a feature of the human operating system. Not a good one, not one that we wish we had, but it's a real one. And understanding that makes a huge difference in the way that you treat yourself if you make mistakes, because God knows we all make mistakes, and the way you understand people around you. Maybe that person being a flaming jerk just had 2 hours of sleep and didn't have anything to eat all day and just found out that his grandmother's in a coma. You don't know.
Jamie, what happens if they're fully rested?
Well, yeah, that's not not a guarantee that everything, but that does give you, yeah. Did you have- Was there more or no?
No, that's it.
Yeah, it's not a guarantee that things will
Point
go
is
smoothly,
that sometimes you really are facing,
yes.
those factors aren't really at play.
That is absolutely, true. Sometimes you do have an ideal situation and things still go sideways. Talk about that, thank you.
As a musician who performs all the time, and
Yes.
which is a potentially stressful situation. It's my point of view that we cannot control anything that someone else is doing,
Yes.
but
Yes.
we do have control over how we react to things.
Mhm,
So if you're alert to your body sensations,
mhm,
you can feel because as you said, there's a progression of feelings,
mhm.
just like a cold, you know. Sometimes we can get sensitized, oh, I'm a little tired, and you can understand that 24 hours from now, you're gonna be sick. It takes a while to
Fully
do that,
manifest.
but if we can control our reaction, then we are in a position of being able to do something rather than being consumed by the. I'm hearing you say it's an inevitable process. I don't believe it's inevitable. I feel that we have the possibility to learn about ourselves and control what our reaction is.
Okay.
I know when, I used to,
Can you speak up,
I
John?
used to teach.
Mhm.
And, occasionally, as in presenting material, a student or two would either try to heckle or they would just start carrying on. And my favorite reaction was just to stop
Mhm.
what I was doing and let everybody else become aware of what they were doing. And they eventually became aware of what they were doing,
Mhm.
and it stopped on its own accord.
Mhm.
And and I found that was more effective than trying to overpower the issue.
Yes.
So much depends upon the perception of yourself
Yes.
and what the triggers are and sort of back away or just, like being short. It's like every day I'm told I'm short.
Thanks.
Every day.
Right?
And and my scholars I work with. It's being old. Mrs. Miller, aren't you too old to teach? Aren't you too short to teach? Are you a student? And you go in the store, oh, you're adorable. And I'm going. Yeah, say that again. I'm going to tell my children. But call them. But it's, you can either, make it part of you and share it. Or what that is like. And then, oh, you're in the store, what a little physical. But it's, I mean, even a long time ago, and I don't know, maybe I was in my 20s. I was out in my garden, and a youngster, maybe 8, maybe 10 years old, came, and she said, will you play with me? It's fun, so it's, how you handle things and each of us had different different. Interesting.
Very. I do want to respond to one thing you said. You say, I'm making it sound like it's inevitable. And maybe I am. I think that's part of the technique, but I think you're right. It is not an inevitable thing. What we talk about in psychology, and I suppose in a lot of social sciences, is probabilities. It is more likely that it has a tendency to go in this
You
direction.
have to really
But
practice.
you have to really practice. Yeah. One of the things we look at with couples counseling is a lot of times people will get into what we call a cyclical fight. And I'll give you a quick example. One that everyone already uses. All right, so husband comes and gets the Amazon credit card bill and then comes and blows up at his wife because, oh, look at all the stuff that you bought. And she pushes back that we needed to have that stuff. And why are you even criticizing me? And you know, the end result is he's sleeping on the couch and she's sitting in bed feeling righteously justified, but also pissed off that he would attack her. And like this relationship has been dealt a serious blow. And the next day it's all back up, right? But we do that same cycle. That same pattern over and over and over. We have the same fight. We relitigate the same grievance over and over. Why do we do that? Doesn't make sense, right? And I talk you the brain takes the path of least resistance. All right, and that's a principle that we apply in psychology as well. It would seem like that's going head into resistance, right? If I'm doing this, I know I'm going to have a big blowout fight. I'm going to be stressed. I'm going to be drained. I'm going to be sleeping on the couch. This is terrible. Why do I even do it in the first place? Because it is the path of least resistance for my brain. My brain is thinking, all right, I've done this 17 times. I have a pretty good idea that if I do this the 18th time, things are going to turn out that way. Oh, look, they did. I proved my idea. Reality works the way I thought it should. My brain is out there to try and understand the world around me, and following the same pattern and getting the same result over and over is a confirmation loop. It tells your brain that, yeah, you're doing it right. You got this figured out. You put in A, you get B every time. You got it. Good job. Look great. Even though the outcome itself is terrible. And it's easier for my brain to go through, all right, I got 17 different options here. Which one am I going to do? I'm going to do the one that I know what the outcome is. Even if the outcome is negative, I know what the outcome is. So I'm going to tend, again, without intervention, without conscious thought, without redirecting things, I'm going to fall into the one I've already taken before. Because that's familiar, it's comfortable, I know where it's going to go. Even though I don't want to go where it's going to go, I know where it's going to go, as opposed to having the complete unknown of what would happen if I didn't complain about the Amazon credit card. What would happen if I talked about my credit card that I ran up instead? You know, who knows? So our brains like what's familiar. They like feeling like they're competent. They like feeling like they got things figured out. So even if it comes up to a negative outcome, we will tend, without conscious intervention, to do that over and over again because it's habit, because it's comfortable, because it's predictable. And our brains love things that are predictable. Yeah.
If you're dealing with somebody who you think is really influenced by a cult,
Mhm.
how do you deal with that?
All right.
Can you repeat the question
yeah,
for Zoom
yeah.
and for other people, because
All right.
John's voice is
That's
quiet?
right. So the question was, if you are dealing with somebody who you really think is influenced by a cult, how do you deal with that? And that's gonna be a big one. So let me kind of take a step back and I'm gonna address that. I think that deserves some good time. First thing, you're saying you believe them to be influenced by a cult. So we're getting into that identity politics again, right? We're saying that I am this kind of person and you are that kind of person. Whatever cult means to me, I'm Christian, you're Satanist. I'm Democrat, you're Republican. Whatever the cult is, I'm saying that there is something fundamental about your belief set that is fundamentally different than my belief set, and it cannot be reconciled. Because otherwise I wouldn't call you a cultist, right? There's something about the things that you believe that I believe is actually toxic. Probably, definitely to me and probably to you for holding that belief. All right. So from the get-go, from the jump, we're kind of already spreading out that, I guess what I'm trying to set up here is in the context of civil discourse. I don't know with somebody who you genuinely feel is in a cult, civil discourse is going to be a thing that's possible.
Right.
That doesn't mean you can't interact with them. That doesn't mean you can't try and advocate to them. That doesn't mean you can't try to persuade them. But the possibility for someone who you genuinely think is not operating on the same rational principles that you are, having a civil conversation, what's the common ground that you're speaking? So, yeah.
I say my sister and I cannot talk politics.
Mhm.
Our husbands spend a lot of time keeping us apart. We will even say to each other when we're seeing each other, oh, we can't go there. And we
Right.
stop.
Right.
But this is a long-term relationship and
Yes.
we've learned how to do this, but I don't know if you meet somebody at church and the next thing you know, you're on different poles. It's a little different, but
Mhm.
we've learned just to say, I don't agree with what you're saying, but I think we need to change the subject. This is exactly what we do.
Mhm.
And we move on.
And that's exactly what you would want to do. I mean, if there's someone who you cannot have a civil discourse on this topic. And it's not worth destroying the relationship to really hash it out because you're very strongly invested in your position. And you don't have the conversation. Yeah. Now, is that going to change their mind? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You are basically conceding that you're going to have your wrong beliefs and I'm going to let you have your wrong beliefs and you're entitled to go to hell your own way. Right? No offense. I'm not
Actually,
not trying to put words in your mouth.
Entitled to
but-
vote the way you vote.
Well,
Still.
whatever it happens to
Yeah.
be, we all have the right to our own mistakes. And as long as your mistakes aren't impacting, my life or my kids' lives, okay, you can have your mistakes. Now, politics gets messy because
Yeah.
there's a greatly enhanced chance that your mistakes are impacting my life and my
Right.
kids' lives. So, yes.
Yeah.
Well, I say this is all about respect.
Mhm.
And you can't have any kind of discourse with somebody.
If you don't have
That will be beneficial for both the and children's respect.
So, and jump off of that a little bit, and I know we've talked, a little bit about things that we need to do and making conscious choices and what is your agency? And we've come up multiple times already, so I'm gonna plug next week if you want to come in for the winning art of listening. It's gonna be a great conversation. We're gonna talk about practically how to do that thing because listening is a key skill in all of this. But for today, you're right, respect is essential. And how do you get that person to respect you?
By listening to them,
All
by
right.
respecting them.
By respecting them. Yeah. I cannot demand respect. I cannot go up to anybody and say, look, I'm a freaking doctor of psychology. Listen to what the hell I'm telling you, right? I know what I'm talking about. You should respect me. And you're all be like, well, look at that idiot. He's full of herself. Why am I gonna listen to that? I need to be respectful to you. Even if I think you're in a bloody cult, if I want there to be a chance that you're going to be respectful to me. And it is a chance. My being respectful to you does not guarantee that you're going to be respectful to me. I can put myself out there and say, all right, I accept that your position is valid. Tell me what your thoughts are. What do you think about me? Well, I think you're an idiot. Okay, but what else? That's it. I think you're an idiot. And I can go back for that abuse 3 or 4 times and finally go, you know what? This isn't going. I can make the overture. I can try to get myself in a position where I'm not having my amygdala hijacked. I can try to get myself in a position where I'm not really trying to lock in on my identity that I feel threatened about and try to be as open and understanding and approachable as I can be. But even when I do that, even when I'm fully rested and fully sated and all my baselines are where they should be for an ideal outcome, I might not get an ideal outcome. I might not.
I respect your right to be wrong.
Right. Right. And that sometimes is as far as.
But if you say that out loud to somebody.
And have to phrase that as, I respect your right to be wrong, you need to respect mine. Because then you're giving them the, you feel I'm.
I'm so sorry. We've just lost sound on Zoom. I don't know why. You just faded out. I have no idea.
The 10:30 service.
Yeah. Okay. Laura, we'll see you in the sanctuary. Take care.
Okay, so wrap up quickly, I
Yeah, we
ran out
have,
of time, sorry.
yeah.
All right, so I think we talked about a lot of the things that we need to do